So you just got paid. Now what? Hello and welcome to this episode of the Just Got Paid podcast. And thank you so much for joining us today. We are recording this live on our YouTube channel and we're blasting it out to our social media platforms as well. I'm your host, Eric Hellon. And on today's episode, I want to dive into a hot topic that many people are talking about right now, maybe even fearful of, and that's a recession. So we're diving into what a recession is, how to be ready for it, and then most importantly, how to make sure that your money and your household are prepared in case we do find ourselves coming into another recession. There's a couple things that I want to talk about, and I want to kind of lay a foundation before we get started. Number one, this is not a fear tactic. A recession is nothing to be afraid of. A recession is nothing more than an economic cycle. We go through recessions. You've lived through recessions before if you've been living long enough. And so chances are you're going to get through whatever the next one is just the same. However, there are ways to be more prepared financially for them. There may be some who remember the recession that we had back around 2009 and how much of a hit it took to like housing and unemployment, things of that nature. And so there were probably some things that you may have learned from going through that recession that can prepare you for going through the next recession. And so this is really what I want to chat about today because I want to kind of lay that foundation. The sky is not falling. It's not the end of the world. But if we do see us ourselves going through a recession here in America, I just want you to be ready for it. And so the first thing I want to talk about is what is a recession? I'm going to give you the very definition of a recession, and then I'll kind of break it down in layman's terms. It says a recession is a period of economic decline that lasts for 2 consecutive quarters, so for 6 months, where our gross domestic product, our GDP, actually contracts or shrinks. And so for 6 straight months, we see a decline and a slowdown in our economy. That's what equates to being a recession. And so typically during a recession, we see that Americans spend less money. We do see unemployment, unfortunately, rise. And then we also see that businesses just kind of slow down on their spending. And so they're not really investing in a lot of development, R&D, products or hiring even. So that's typically what we see in a recession. Like I said, we did have a major recession that lasted quite a while back in 2007 to 2009. It actually lasted for 18 months. And that recession did take a major hit, especially to our housing market. I mean, what kind of prompted that was the housing crisis or the bubble bursting, if you would, when a lot of people started foreclosing because they weren't able to afford the homes that they were purchasing. And a lot of times they were buying those homes using fraud or what we call in the industry liar loans, which are stated income loans. But there's some other aspects of the economy and things that happened during that time that made us have to go through that recessionary time. So we did see the housing crisis. We also saw a lot of unemployment. And so that lasted about 18 months. Whether you know it or not, we did go through one even more recently back in 2020 due to COVID-19. But that didn't last very long. So that was a short-term recession. And what they did to fight against that longer term was they started cutting the interest rate. So the Federal Reserve really started to cut down that interest rate, which has some good and bad effects to it. But what it did was it kind of put a stop to the recession. And then it created what we call, and we're all familiar with, inflation. Because once you start cutting those rates so low, then all of a sudden other things start to cost more money, your general home goods and stuff like that. And so we do have inflation because there's more money in the market. So I'm not going to dive too deep into the economical, aspects of it where, okay, we're talking about micro and macroeconomics. I did study that in school. And so I happen to have a passion for it. But we're actually going to dive into more of how can you be prepared? What can you do with your money, your paycheck, and so that you're prepared for a recession should one come. I think the biggest thing when it comes to recession or negative news or anything like that is to not panic. You cannot panic. When you panic, you make bad decisions. And so one instance of this is we've seen in the stock market, a lot of people just start to pull money out of the market, and so the stock market has, took a big tumble, about 9% drop. And so what happened was everybody's pulling their money out. They're selling, selling, selling because they're afraid of the headlines. They're afraid of what's going on in administration and tariffs. So there's a lot of things at play in our economy that cause people to panic. And so I don't want you to panic. I want you to be smart about the decisions that you make, because ultimately 10 years, 20 years down the road, whatever recession that may come, we'll get through. And it may not be as bad as you may expect. And so I don't want you to panic. I'll give you some strategies in this episode that you can implement in your household. But like I said, I don't want to get too far off to where we're talking about global economy and things of that nature. I really want you just to focus on your household and don't panic. We'll get through this. So there are pros and cons to any recession or any economic downturn, right? There are good things that happen. There are bad. Like I mentioned, during the COVID-19, interest rates dropped, which was great, for those who were trying to buy a house. People were refinancing. We had a big refinance boom. People were paying 2 and 3% interest rates. So we haven't seen anything like that. And I don't know if we ever will. Who knows? But I think the biggest thing that we saw was, hey, this is a benefit. People were able to buy homes. They were locking in very low interest rates, and so had lower payments on homes. And so it did create this buzz in our housing market to where people can now get out and go buy. Unfortunately, a con to that was that competition was so stiff. It was so hard for you to get your offer accepted that oftentimes you had to, quote unquote, overpay for the house in order to even get your offer accepted. And the reason I put that in quotes is because what you overpaid for back in 2020, chances are you probably made up ground over the last 4 or 5 years to where you're either even or you have some appreciation value in your home, depending on where you live in the country. So, when these things happen, there are pros and there are cons. I'm going to dive into a few of them, and that way we can kind of talk about them specifically. One of the biggest cons is that there are definitely job losses. And so cutbacks happen. What we're seeing in the headlines right now, a lot of federal workers are losing their jobs. And I know we talk a lot about government efficiency and wanting to save money there, but if we have too many people lose their jobs, then they're going to be at risk of falling behind on their payments, falling behind on housing, credit card debts, whatever the case may be. And now we have these other aspects of our financial instability because credit cards are not being paid, other bills aren't being paid. Housing, if it's affected, and now you're starting to have short sales and foreclosures, and that can really hurt our housing market. And although people may say, oh, well, we need prices to come down, trust me, you don't want your aunt and your uncle to lose their house also you can, find a good deal. There has to be some balance there. So we cannot have too many people hit the unemployment lines at one time because it will shock our system. And so too many job losses at once can have some additional impact to our economy that we may not see right away. Second thing is there's actually a higher cost of borrowing. Even though we see that, home interest rates will typically drop, which is a good thing, when it comes to borrowing, a lot of these lenders tighten their guidelines. And so it becomes more difficult for you to actually get financing. And it's not just housing. It could be a business loan, additional credit cards or personal lines of credit, things of that nature may be more difficult or more expensive for you to borrow. And so we do see that with recessions as well. So I know, people are like, hey, if a recession happens, interest rates are coming down. Sure, but it doesn't necessarily mean that the lenders have to keep it so easy for you to qualify for a loan. So it could counteract the interest rates coming down. So just keep that in mind as well. Another thing which we've been seeing lately in the news is stock market volatility. And this one is a big one. There's a lot of wealth that gets lost during these times. And if you're on the younger side, if you're, younger than I am, younger than 40 years old, then you probably have some time to make up, for the economy to rebound and to do the things that it needs to do. However, if you're nearing retirement age or if you're currently retired and you're depending on the stock market returns for your retirement income, then it could really affect our seniors. And that stock market volatility can hurt those that we love. And so we don't want to see a lot of volatility. Investors love stability. They love calm. They love boring. They don't want to see one minute we have tariffs, the next minute we don't. One minute the economy is doing good, next minute it's not. They don't want to see that. They don't want to hear about whispers of war. These are things that can really impact our stock market, make investors pull out of the stock market, get into the bonds market, and it can really hurt, like I said, those who depend on that income in order to retire or they're nearing retirement. So keep that in mind as well. Now, as far as some of the pros, like I mentioned, home interest rates tend to go down. Home prices could potentially go down too. And so if you're looking to buy a home and you've been waiting for interest rates to come down so you can qualify and really afford a 30-year mortgage, then this may be an opportunity that comes your way. Now, keep in mind, like I said, what happened before, we saw a lot of competition come when interest rates dropped. So be prepared for that. What I always say is, if you can start tucking away money now, start to do that. When you're thinking about buying a home, it's more than just the cost of acquisition of the home. It's actually paying to upkeep the home as well. So the more you can save and prepare now, the better off you'll be. Chances are you may have to come in with a stronger offer as well. So if there's a priority, if there's a lot of people, coming in and trying to purchase a home, then they're going to say, hey, well, we're going to give this to whoever. Obviously, they're going to try to sell it at top dollar, but you're likely going to have to waive your appraisal contingency. And what that means is, hey, I'm willing to pay more than what the bank actually says it's worth. And so in order to do that, you're going to need cash. If you're going to pay $5,000 above appraised value or $10,000 above appraised value in order to get the home that you truly want, you're going to need cash to do that because the bank is not going to overpay for the house. So if you're thinking about buying a house and you're waiting for interest rates to come down and the market home prices to come down, be ready for the competition because it could kind of drive prices up instead of down. And so you have to consider that as well. Like I said, have some cash on hand in order to get the home that you truly want. Second thing is, there's actually less competition. So for business investing, I know this is kind of like a catch-22, but some businesses are going to close their doors. They can't compete. A recession will make businesses have to, like I said, reduce their staff, maybe even close permanently, reduce hours, things of that nature. So if you're in a business that's highly competitive, maybe, it's a good time where you can acquire other businesses or, some of your competition may disappear and you could be the lone one standing if you're prepared for the recession. So keep that in mind. Businesses will slow down. People spending money is going to slow down. And so that will have a direct impact on local businesses. And then the third thing is, there's oftentimes more negotiating power when it comes to job offers, things of that nature. If you're in the hiring process, or even if you're at work and you're thinking about kind of getting a raise, it's less, I want to say this correctly, it costs your company less to pay you more than to go out and hire somebody else. Keep that in mind. When they go out and hire somebody, they have to train them, they have to background check them, they have to do all these different things to get them up to speed, where you're already there, you're already in the thick of it, and you can negotiate your income or your salary if you're doing a good job, if you're adding to your skills, if you're, showing yourself as an asset to the company. So there may be some negotiating power there where companies may not want to hire additional staff, but they may be more willing to invest in the staff that they have. So if you have some room for negotiations on your income, take advantage of that. So let's dive into it. How do you prepare for a potential recession, this recession to come? I'm really, kind of calling this episode Being Recession Ready, because we don't know if a recession is definitely coming. I don't have a crystal ball, but we're starting to see signs. We're starting to see some of the things that we've seen before. And like I said, we tend to learn, hopefully, from what we've experienced in the past. And so as we start to see these signs, we can say, okay, maybe our recession is on the horizon. And so it's better to be prepared. Just like if you were to step outside and see some clouds off in the horizon and you think, well, it might rain. Let me grab that, umbrella. Let me grab a coat. Let me be prepared in case it does rain. I want you to think of this the same way when it comes to recession coming our way. So first thing I want you to do is cut all unnecessary spending. This is a time to stack your bread. You need to really prepare. You need to have cash on hand for the just in case. There could be things to come where you're going to need quick access to cash. And that might be a good thing. It might be an investment. Like I said, acquiring a business, a competitor, or something like that where you need to have some cash. So let's start now. Start cutting out all the unnecessary spending. Cut back. You don't have to go from spending $2,000 a month to zero, but just cut back. Take that money, save it. Have some money on hand. Typically, I would tell you, take that difference and invest it. But with the stock market volatility and things going on, I really don't want you to put that into something where you're going to lose the value that you need that money short term. So I really want you to just save that money, put it aside, hold it until we can kind of get through this time together, and then see where you want to use that capital. If nothing happens and there's no recession and the market's doing good, then obviously you can reinvest that in the market. But let's cut back on all unnecessary spending. Take a look and really audit your spending on a monthly basis. You got to know where your money is going. I talked to this. I talked to a lot of clients about this. I talked to them blue in the face about it because I really want you to know where your money is going. You need to be able to tell it where to go and not let your money tell you where to go. And so audit your last spending, keep track of, maybe the last week, last month, and really see where did your money go and track for the next, few weeks and just see where your money is going. And that way you can make some honest decisions about where you have some room to cut back. So definitely do that. What we're going to do with that extra money is to make sure that your emergency fund is set up. An emergency fund is going to be very important and it's going to be vital to you surviving any economic downturn. You need to have 3 to 6 months of saving set aside. And this is a perfect opportunity to do so because you're going to be cutting back on spending and you're going to be putting that money away. So let's start to tuck it for the 3 to 6 months, especially when we hear about unemployment and layoffs and things of that nature. You want to be prepared in case, God forbid, you lose your job, that you have that money there to give you some time to go out and find another job. And so you don't want to be stuck when you're living just paycheck to paycheck. You lose your job and now, you're scrambling and borrowing and running up your credit cards and maxing them out, things of that nature. So you really want to have an emergency fund set up, that unexpected spending, the cutbacks that you're making, that'll help to fund that emergency fund. So get that going right away. And like I said, you want to have that money close by. You don't want to put it into the stock market, things of that nature, but you can put it into like a high yield savings account. Just find something that's going to give you some money, some return on your money, but not put it into the stock market because we don't want to worry about the volatility there. So I mentioned, about talking to your employer about maybe upskilling, reskilling, adding to your repertoire on what you already do. That way you can negotiate a higher salary. That's something that you can do now to prepare. But also, if there's a side business or something that you can do nights and weekends to earn additional income, start to do those things. Start to find out what those additional side hustles can be. What skills, what talents do you have? I don't care if it's cooking or art or whatever the case may be. I hear about people making money in so many weird and wild ways that I wouldn't even think of. And chances are, if you sat down and just kind of wrote down some of the talents you have, passions you have, you can probably find some skills that you can earn money with. And so think about that. If there's a side hustle opportunity for you to earn some extra income now, take advantage of that and get started right away. It might take some time to get it going. And then we want to manage your debt wisely. So any debt that you currently have, your credit cards, things of that nature, call them, reach out to them, let them know, hey, this is what's going on. Can I have, 6 months of either 0% interest or can I lower? The worst they can say is no. right? If you call to ask for them to lower your interest rate to give you some time to get caught up, or reduce it to zero or whatever the case may be, there may be an opportunity there to, if one card reduces it to zero, you pay that balance off. Maybe you transfer over to that card, and so that way you have some opportunities to save on interest payments. You really want to be smart about the way that you manage your debt. Interest rates will come down with the recession, but they're pretty high right now. And so there's some bills I talked about in the previous episode. There are some bills that they're trying to pass where they make credit card, they cap them at 10% interest. It hasn't passed yet. But if we do see a recession, we do see interest rates tend to come down, and there may be some opportunities for you to transfer balances to a card that has a 0% interest for 6 months, something like that, and save some additional costs there. So manage your debt. Look at everything that you have, figure out a strategy, and if you need help, you can definitely reach out to us. That's what we do for our clients as well. Don't take on any new debt. I know that the average car payment right now is over $700 a month. Don't go out and get a new car. It's not the time. Not with a recession on the horizon. You really don't want to go out and do that. If you desperately need a car because your car broke down, try to find one that you can pay cash for, or is maybe $5,000-$10,000, something that you can just get by with right now. Don't go out and get a new car with a higher interest rate, because those payments are going to eat up your funds that you need during a recession. So if there's anything that you need to spend money on, try to pay cash for it. Don't run up credit cards, and don't go out and make new big purchases like a car and take on more payments. So definitely manage that debt. And then be smart about your housing. I mean, if you're renting right now, and let's say your lease is coming to an end next month, start looking for other places that might be more affordable, even if it's not exactly where you want to be. I know it's tough. I know it's hard to move. Everybody hates moving. I never heard somebody say, I love moving. I just love packing and boxing up stuff and lifting and moving stuff and getting a moving truck or a moving company. Never happened in all my years of being in real estate. Everybody hates to move, and I get it. But if it can save you a couple $100 to move into doesn't necessarily have to be a smaller place, but maybe it's a different location. Maybe it's 5 minutes further from the freeway than where you're currently at, things of that nature. Look around. Just see what's out there if your lease is coming to an end. If you're already paying a mortgage, find ways to save money. If you're currently paying somebody to do different services around the house, maybe you can do those services. I know, like, for us, we like to have somebody come in and deep clean our house, but, when times get tight, it's time for us to clean up the house ourselves. Those are things that you can just do. I'm not one for landscape, but if you have a lawnmower, cut your own grass instead of hiring somebody to do so. Like I said, just find ways to cut back around the house. It'll really add up. And I think once you see your savings account grow, your emergency fund build, and then you start to see that you're ready for the weather to come, the recession to come, then it'll give you confidence, and it'll allow you to not only survive a recession, but to truly thrive and find opportunities that will arise. So keep that in mind. And then, like I mentioned, don't panic sell. I know people are selling their stocks. Everybody's afraid of the headlines that are out there. Just don't do it. If you can hold on. This is, like I mentioned at the beginning, a recession is an economic cycle. We go through recessions. We go through highs. We go through lows. We go through, these pullbacks, or what we call corrections in the market. And so, if you can sit on the investments, keep with your same strategy. If you plan to buy a certain amount of stocks every month for the next 10, 20 years, stick with that strategy. It's dollar cost averaging. Chances are you're going to be buying stocks at a much lower price. And so you can make up some great opportunity and some great investments arise because of a recession. So stick to your game plan if you can. I know different advice needs to be shared with different people. I'm not one to give you a cookie cutter solution or a blanket advice for everybody. Everybody's situation is different. Depending on your age, depending on your income level, you may need different strategies in order to truly thrive through a recession. And so, like I mentioned, you can reach out to me. I can help you kind of strategize, see where your money's at, where it's going, and figure out a way for you to build up more of that savings so you have cash on hand, but also look at your timelines and see if you can survive not only this recession, but any recession to come. And if there's opportunities for you to take advantage of. So keep some cash on hand, be ready, be open to opportunities, because like I said, there are pros and there are cons to recession. I just don't want you to panic. I don't want you to feel like, the sky is falling because we've gone through this before. We'll get through it again. It's about being prepared, and it's about making the decisions now that may come to be needed in 6 months to a year from now. So the more you're prepared, the more opportunities you'll have through any economic movement, whether good or bad. So that's the advice that I wanted to give you. If you have any questions at all about, your unique situation, definitely don't hesitate to reach out. You can follow us, with our podcast, the Just Got Paid Podcast. We're on all social media platforms at Just Got Paid Pod. Obviously, you can subscribe to our YouTube page as well. And then if you want to reach out to me directly, you can find me at Eric Hellon on Instagram. So that's all that I have for you today. I wish you the best. I want you to be prepared financially for any economic downturn, upturn, good, bad, whatever. With these strategies that I've given you, you'll be well prepared. You'll be ready to go should a recession come. So that's it for now. Until the next episode, be blessed.